Yo, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to an amazing extravaganza, a collection of talent and eccentricity, the likes of which you rarely see anywhere on this planet or on this flat plane, whichever school of thought you are on. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This is a New Cosmic Knowledge channel, and tonight, very, very happy to be joined as advertised by the man that needs no introduction anywhere in the civilized world, or ladies and gentlemen, the uncivilized world, the one, the only Rex Bear. And of course, global witness, Derek BROES, and our special guest tonight, who was able to show up in spite of being in Las Vegas, I think a little earlier today, the irascible R. Wayne Steiger. How are you, gentlemen?
Thank you, Jeff. Doing well, gentlemen. Good to see y'all.
Yeah, if I fall asleep during the discussion here, just scream at me. I'll wake up.
Absolutely. It's a little bit late here on the East Coast, but that's okay. Now, the first question I have, Wayne, is I know the three of us have been in jail before, but have you ever been in jail?
Mm-mm. No.
No? Okay. Well, Rex and I were only in jail overnight, but Derek spent, believe it or not, 1,260 days in jail. Isn't that right, Derek?
1,260 days, yep.
And if you know anything about biblical prophecy, that'll strike a note to you.
Yeah, the only place that you can actually go to prison for doing something that I did, California. So it's something that everybody thinks that, this is just a natural thing. You have 7 people bust into your property and rush you in your backyard, and you pull out a gun and you go, get off my property, and walk them off. I didn't shoot anybody, didn't even touch them. And they charged me with 7 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. And their first offer to me was life.
Wow.
Magnanimous.
I was like, wait a minute. Something is seriously wrong with this equation. People think that this doesn't happen, and it does.
Wow. Rex, you just had a great podcast. Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah. The one that the audio got bad when I started talking about optogenetics via mind control using light and genetically modified neurons, and how they were doing some experiments with mice many years ago where they could actually dictate the physical movements, not just the mind telling the body to move, but actually physical first. And it had a 94% accuracy rating. This was years ago. So non-invasive. No, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. The optogenetics was even more accurate. But then when they had a non-invasive technology where they're using just frequencies and they didn't even have to manipulate the neurons. So completely non-invasive, except for a highly tuned vibrational frequency that had a 94% accuracy rating that dictated what these mice did and how they reacted.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And make sure you check out Leak Project with Rex Bear, R. Wayne Steiger channel, Global Witness channel, and also Raw Reflections and Serpent and Dove. Let me ask you gentlemen a question. It's something that we all know about here within this community, something people in our chat room will be very familiar with. And I just want to kind of play moderator and see what you gentlemen think about this. It's a subject of synchronicity. And synchronicity is near and dear to most of our hearts. We love it when I'm thinking of Derek and Derek calls me up. Wayne was thinking about the last time he met Rex, and all of a sudden he gets a text from Rex. We know what synchronicity is. And most of us ascribe it without a doubt to divine origins. It must be the universe trying to talk to me. It must be God trying to tap me on the shoulder, whatever. And Sandra said something to me yesterday that almost blew my mind. She said, we've all got these things right here. And we've all got, interesting enough, her picture's on the phone, but I didn't know that. But we've all got these things. We all got the cameras all around us. You can be pretty sure if there's a camera pointed at you, it's looking both ways. All these microphones everywhere. And she asked this question: what if synchronicity is now being manipulated by AI? So it's not really the universe. It's not really God. It's artificial intelligence manipulating us to fake synchronicity. And what better way could you come up with if you were trying to figure one out to mislead the truther, the New Age community? Rex Bear, what do you think about that possibility?
That's a great possibility. And I've talked to people that have even considered the possibility that the Elohim described in ancient Hebrew texts could be related to what many would consider an artificial intelligence, super artificial intelligence. Yet at that level, when a digital intelligence becomes self-aware, is it artificial intelligence? Because in reality, we are the 5th generation of artificial intelligence that we know of. And you can even read about that via Blavatsky. There's many texts that there's been translations that go back to the ancient stanzas, not automatic writing, but actual translations that talk about how our physical form now, we're at our 5th. There's been 5 cataclysms in the not recent, but 100,000, 200,000 years. I don't know. We're in the 5th level right now, and we'll see what happens. So we're artificial intelligence as it is. It's self-aware.
Yeah, Rex, it's funny that you say, I've mentioned many times on my show that people keep talking about AI and they look at a robot and they're, looking at Sophia and think, oh, well, look, AI is coming. Oh, this is terrible. And look what we're doing. And first of all, I say we have become a reduced species from a psychological standpoint, that we have a perception intellect. We think we're smart, we're not. And that we've been reduced down to such a programmable level that a computer can emulate us. That if you went back, 200 years even, and you spoke to man, even one that wasn't educated, they had a much more unique perspective to themselves. So there wasn't a perception. They weren't necessarily living by this perceived world. And that, there is nothing new under the sun. The same yesterday, today, tomorrow. That this is a repetitive nature of everything within the entire system. So we are AI. If you read, just like you're speaking about, these ancient texts and the translations, if you go into these things and you read the details of the creation and the manipulation of who we are and what was made, when you think about, when you're reading about, when people speak about the Kundalini, right? So the Kundalini, if you read the ancient text, that was actually transmitter. That was a manipulation by, Enki at the time, so he could actually control the slaves, right? That there had to be some type of communication because there was too many of them, and they sat up too high in their little altars and their kings. But just as what I would say as the 2 dueling brothers of Enki and Enlil, that Enki established it so also Enlil could hear the thoughts of mankind, which is why he was so irritated and wanted to wipe out mankind. If you read the text, is that he was irritated because all he could hear is them having sex. So that when he created the procreation element within them, that they were having so much sex, he was like, I'm so sick and tired of listening to them screwing. It's hysterical to actually read it. But the reality is we are right now AI. And to escape that AI system is becoming in touch with who you are at the core. And that's from the spirit standpoint, that breath of life breathed into us, that understanding a much deeper perspective. I can absolutely confirm, Jeff, when you say that AI is commanding people's consciousness right now, but that's quite different than you can always know when it is complying with where the world is trying to take it. Because all of us right now, we're paying far closer attention than most people about what is taking place on the world stage. And so if what they're trying to do is in compliance with that, well, then sure, you could start to see how that would be manipulated. But if you're somebody like myself or Rex or you, that we're, or Wayne, that we're busting the paradigms of everything from the churches, from the establishment, from the government, we're wiping it all out. So the Christ figure being the most disruptive figure ever, right? So this figure, however you want to see him, whatever, but incredibly disruptive, disagreeing and destroying every paradigm, every thought process, every legal system, all of it, all in one foul swoop. Well, you're probably not AI. That's probably the result of the natural cause of the source, so to speak, is that when we become so uncomfortable, we'll choose death over life. And that's the natural source of everything, that when you're comfortable, you'll reproduce. When you're not comfortable, you're not going to reproduce and you're going to choose death. And that's precisely what this is, that we're choosing, hey, we would rather die than be ruled.
Wayne Steiger, what say you?
I'd say by the very definition, God is AI.
What do you mean?
Well, we call it artificial intelligence. Are we using the carbon-based life form as the standard to determine what intelligence is? So by definition, God, no matter what the concept, is AI.
That's fascinating. And also my friend Magenta Pixie, she espouses a thought that, and this can go, I want you all to comment on this. She says that there can even be positive AI. So is it possible that if AI is manipulating synchronicity, could some AI be trying to manipulate it to lead us and guide us in a positive fashion?
Can I jump in for a minute about AI? I think one point that's important when you bring up artificial intelligence, especially if artificial intelligence is self-aware, then it's not artificial anymore. And when you bring up artificial, it's a good way to symbolize something metaphorically, but it's whatever created us or is controlling us. Maybe there's something controlling us that is artificial in sense. And that makes me think about the interview I had with Daryl Sims last night when he had he described this mass abduction in '92. There's all sorts of evidence to back it up. And in the hypnosis regression sessions, these beings, this intermediary being that had several different types of beings flanking each side of him, and he was an intermediary for somebody else, he was asking the abductees, where is the soul? And they were they had a diagram of the brain, and they're like, is the soul here? Where's the soul? And they had to know, and they wanted to know, and they were getting pissed off because when they were asking that question, the abductees were like, I don't know. And it pissed them off. And a lot of people think that these beings are millions of years advanced. And I'm sure there are beings that are millions of years advanced, but the ones that might have a lot of control over us, I wouldn't be surprised if they're using us as, they're taking our technologies now to an extent and reverse engineering some of the stuff we're coming up with. They're using us as the algorithms and the knowledge base, and then they're seeing what we're creating, and then the AI stuff and the digital intelligence that we are co-creating, they're taking that for their advantage as well. So we're building their empires. We're still building their pyramid apex, and they're in the apex. And then most people are not even in the pyramid. They're underneath in the foundation trying to build it up. But certainly right now with the intelligence levels and the computers and the supercomputers, now they're putting memory in DNA, in human DNA, far more than they can in a hard drive that's available today, unless it's human DNA or synthetic DNA. That is very realistic to think that we are actually batteries for the system, and we're keeping it alive. We're rechargeable batteries.
These advanced beings don't even know what the soul is, you said, or what's crazy, the soul? Right? They can't even define it.
Think about that for a minute. How wild is that?
You know,
Spaceships that can travel to stars, but they can't talk about the soul. What is it? Where is it? They want it. Genetics, they're think about that. Then you can add to the fact that they are co-creating our genetics with theirs, trying to capture the soul, trying to capture the essence so they can get in there, because maybe their bodies, even though they can take their consciousness into other bodies, there's maybe a certain spark or something that they don't have that they want. And we have.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, it goes back to Hawking's whole point that there's only really two buckets here on aliens. First of all, the first bucket would be is that they would be benevolent and would want to make contact with man for the exchange of intellectual creativity, etc. The other bucket is that they're not benevolent, but they are in fact malevolent. And then that would then offer to the next thought that if they're not for us, then they would be wanting to enslave us.
Quick question. So Wade, when you say that, you know, I know Hawking's worked very well. I met him a couple times. The thing about the statement that he had made and the thinking that he had as far as if they were benevolent, then they would want to contact us. That in and of itself is an arrogant statement on his behalf. It's an assumption that we are good enough, that we would be seen as good enough for them to want to contact us, that we had something to offer. So let me put it this way: to the squirrel in the middle of the forest that's never met a man, I might be a benevolent being walking by him. The squirrel has nothing to offer me. I could care less about the squirrel. I'm going to walk right by him. right? So the reality is that that's a poor foundation of thought, and Hawking was consistently, not to say that Hawking wasn't a smart man, but it's a poor consistency in thought that he often thought with his ego, and he thought with the arrogance that man is. And that's why I say we have to drop the arrogance that we think that we're something when we're not. And that's why I found, even though I don't like him so much, but when somebody makes a truthful statement, regardless of what the truthful statement is, regardless of whose mouth it comes from, it doesn't matter, it's a truthful statement. So Neil deGrasse had made a statement about, that the difference between us and chimpanzees is 1% of an intellect, right? And we go from chimpanzees to us making a Hubble telescope and doing all the things that we're doing. Take a being that's 1% above us or 2% above us in an intellect, and they're going to see us as less than chimpanzees. They have no interest. We've got nothing to offer them except something else. Just what you said, Rex, that we have something that they want. So there is a soul and there is a spirit. These are two different things according to these ancient texts through all of different places on earth that have shown these ancient texts that there is quite a difference between a soul and a spirit. And so the spirit being something that would have been an energy that they could capture to create, but the soul seems to be an essence which is in our physical body, but not our skin, but yet the blood. So I find it quite interesting that a body, they say, if you ask them, anybody dies, that there are these general practices. First of all, blood is collected. Blood is really, really important. They say, oh, no, it's for your own protection, that, you've got containers to put anything that has any kind of blood in it. And they say, oh, it's to not spread disease and things like this. But they will take the blood from your body when you die and replace it with a different fluid. What's the purpose of that? They go, oh, preservation of the body. Like you care about what that body is doing in that box. It's 6 feet under. You don't care whether that thing went away. What are you preserving? And by the way, it's still going to go away anyways. Why are you collecting this stuff? Where is it going?
That's my question. Where's the blood go?
Yeah, where does this go? And then you go back through all these ancient texts of blood sacrifices and altars and all the way back, through anything that you would read in the Bible. This is what I'm saying. The whole point of Christ and that thing where they would say that, oh, he was complying with that. He was telling you point blank, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, that all the blood sacrifices is complete crap. And even the communion itself, having the Last Supper, serving a wine and bread, saying, no, this is a sacrifice, right? Drink this instead of blood, eat this instead of flesh. Stop this nonsense. So there's something far more to this element of our blood that it's truly astonishing that it's literally collected and the power is in the blood. So
the life is in the blood. That was just hitting my head from the scripture.
There's something else there that is going to be really important for us to know going forward.
Rex, is that the soul? Is the soul in the blood? Is the spirit in the blood? Is the stuff thereafter in the blood?
I don't think the spirit is. The soul, that's a great question. But if you have, at a technological level, you have somebody's blood, you could recreate that person. And the more I think about these Egyptian pharaohs that were attempting to live forever and mummify their bodies that would last tens of thousands of years, is because maybe they knew about a technology that they saw or was passed down from previous generations where they could clone, they could take the DNA, they could take the blood and create a completely new body. And they knew how to transfer consciousness from that body to the next. And the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza, I feel was built by giants that could, I'm not talking giants that are a mile tall or anything, but just really big builders. If you see the movie Prometheus or Alien Covenant, where I think that's a good interpretation of these Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, just don't call them late for dinner because they'll be pissed.
But I won't mention the name L.A. Marzulli, Rex. I won't.
Hey, he's a nice guy. I like L.A., but I know you guys have had your differences, and that's a whole other podcast. But I stay neutral as much as possible. You know me, man. I'm about uniting, not dividing. But anyway, so let's go to the Great Pyramid just real quick and go back to Pei and some of these ancient structures that were built way before what we're told. 4,000 years old, 6,000 years old. Some of these structures are much older than 12,000 years old.
Much older.
Yeah. And there was that cataclysm that happened about 10,500 or 11,500 BC that was nearly global, that was almost a reset. There, most people had to get reincarnated. It took out the majority of the population. But I think that there's a society or several societies that lived through these cataclysms. They have it linked to the grand solar minimums and the solar cycles and the sun cycles. And people wonder, well, how would they know? Well, this information has probably been passed on for so long, and certain people have access to this information. And then you get into the MFers, the money funders, and clearly they've got access to this information. That it's in their blood, their bloodlines. You're talking about blood? Yes, of course. And then also think about this, the blood. What about entities that can control people through their blood wirelessly, like this podcast I was doing earlier, but at a technological advancement much higher even, that's embedded in our DNA. So you've got firewalls in your DNA that make you age. How do you feel about that? They're learning how to break this out. These ancient hieroglyphics that show these beings with all these different animal parts and stuff on them, and they could have very well been just like that in many regards. But I think there was a time when they were telepathically communicating. So that's why they didn't write stuff down. That's why we're finding language is about 10,000 years old, because they communicated telepathically. They didn't have division. And the Bible even talks about that, how you can take bits and pieces of all these scriptures and information that has been hidden in plain sight, and then you can put it together like you're talking about, Mr. Global Witness, the legend, Mr. Steiger, Mr. Daugherty. I mean, would you agree? Think about that. No wonder they don't have language. They're talking to each other telepathically.
Well, that's what we're talking about, though, Rex. So when I was talking about Enki, as far as those texts talking about that he was building within the Kundalini, within the spinal cord section, that they would be able to communicate with them and command them and even scare them, right? To terrify them, to keep them in line. Because the reason why they had developed them in the first place, according to the text, is that, well, they had an uprising of their own people, right? So you had the Igigi, that rebelled against them, their own people. And so if you have that, well, the one thing that you're going to want to make sure is that you don't create these things and that you're going to establish that in them. So if they could put that into us, that they could hear us and communicate to us, well, of course, that's probably because they had that technology and that ability within themselves.
Wayne, I see your wheels spinning.
No, I was just looking at some notes. I think I can probably add to the fact we're making a whole big assumption in this whole conversation. Everyone here is assuming we've got a spirit. Everyone here is assuming we have a soul. There's no proof of that. None. It's all speculation. And, you know, I'm probably the elder statesman here in the group, but I can tell you after 23,000 days, I've come to the conclusion that, you know, we don't know. We don't know. And what we have is now 7.5 billion human beings out here trying to figure out where did we come from. And you've got a plethora of different ideas and mixture of ideas, mixtures of beliefs. But it comes back to what I read before by one sociologist that said why there would never be unity of humanity. It's because the very thing that drives us at the core is survival. And you can't have unity if you have survival, which is dominant in your staying alive.
That's fascinating. So I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and I'm thinking, do they want us not only for whatever the spirit is or the soul, whichever one we're thinking it is, but they also want us for the blood. And it's been said a couple times in the chat room, you keep going back to this one word, vampires. Is it really a bunch of vampires running this show?
What, here, you, us?
No, are there vampires that want us, that are running us? Are we a blood bank for vampires?
Well, the draconian statements from some of the things that you've seen from the some of the other, I would say, other studies or other beliefs is that there were draconians and Andromedians, right? So that there was different beings that were there, and the draconians very much, or obviously draconians would be related to Dracula. That was a former people that were here at one point in time. As far as Wayne, as far as the spirit, I'm pretty certain that I have a spirit as far as that animates the body. The difference between an animal and human is the fact that we can love, and that and the difference between us and a reptile is the fact that we can nurture. And that comes from a different place, and even Einstein and everything that we've proven for right now. So you can call it whatever you want, but energy, consciousness is proven to be energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. So that is an infinite element. So if just your consciousness is what we would call spirit, then that proves the presence of spirit. I can tell you right now that spirit animating things, the difference, like I said, a reptile has a reptilian brain. It'll watch its young be eaten by a predator with an unblinking eye. The difference between us is that we have that nurturing component. So there's, from a soul and a spirit, you could call the snake spiritless and soulless. It literally doesn't have a soul or a spirit, and you can detect that. So whether you're looking for proof or a fingerprint on here, you know that the statement of blessed are those that have not seen but yet believe. We also know that there are multiple dimensions, right? We do know this thing, that there are multiple dimensions, and obviously we live in a 3D world. You can't see beyond a three-dimensional world, right? So for a fourth dimension, if you call a spirit a fourth dimension, maybe there's a portion of us that you can call a spirit, but a portion of us lives in a different dimension. So you've got as above, so below, if you want to follow the Luciferian statement of that, or on earth as in heaven from a Christ standpoint. So there are truths in these statements, what they are, where they are, how they are they tangible, are they fungible, can you touch them, is a different story. I wouldn't expect, in fact, I would be highly disappointed if the things that were in the 4D and 3D and further worlds of dimensions were actually here at this present time, because we would just, all that would do is enable us to screw those things up too. So the fact that we are limited to this dimension is, I think, to some degree, a huge blessing, because right now we haven't figured out how to handle 3 dimensions, less 4 or 5.
Maybe we never do, because we could be at the point, as well as previous civilizations, a complete collapse of the total species.
And to a degree that may be, to a degree, and I don't think a collapse of a total species, but I think that that's where you find, from a scriptural standpoint, it's like that we cause this ourselves. And that's what I mean by when the Luciferians say, hey, we've told you the truth. The whole objective of free will is you really don't have a free will. You have a free will to either crash your car straight into the wall or not. So is it really a free will? No, there's just the bad way and the good way. And then there's those two components.
Now, who defines the good way or the bad way?
Well, and that's what I've always said. We don't even know.
I don't believe that there's a Lucifer. I can't find the cat.
We don't know the difference between good or evil. Just in the same way.
You're defining insanity then.
No. So Wayne, if you think that there's no Lucifer, that's totally fine. In the same way that you could say that there's no God, totally fine. You say there's no God and there's no Lucifer. Okay, so collectively our consciousness, our consciousness from a pure standpoint makes up God the Father, and collectively our evil consciousness makes up evil and the Lucifer. Well, that's clear. You do things every single day that you hate that you do, but you can't stop yourself from doing them. All of us do that.
Yeah, but that's indoctrination. When you start defining what good and bad is to an individual, that becomes, I think, more religious than it is, in fact, instinctive.
But Wayne, I'm not doing that. I'm telling you right now that we actually don't. That's why there's the middle way, right? That you don't get to choose right or wrong, because we actually don't know what is right. Everything has been indoctrinated and we're told what is right. That's why I always said, from a scriptural standpoint, everybody says, hey, Lucifer was the father of lies. And he's the one that said, you'll be like God, knowing the difference between good or evil, giving the apple to Eve, right? So he gives this apple to Eve and says, you'll be like God, knowing the difference between good or evil. But this is the same guy that's the father of the lie. So did he tell the truth on his biblical debut? I don't think so, right? That's the lie. You don't know.
If you believe the story, I don't believe the story.
Well, all of those stories are allegories.
Rex wants to weigh in on this. Jump in, Rex.
Well, no, I don't want to interrupt. That's fine. I mean, if you want to finish off, I was listening to some things you were saying, and I love the fact that we all think different, because if we all thought the same, then would be cyborg. And that would suck. But at the same time, when I heard a few things you said about the animal and the soul and the spirit and reptiles and snakes, and that animals can't love, I would respectfully disagree, because first of all, if you've ever seen animals, deer, for example, that lose their loved one, their what do you call them? Bambi, their doe, whatever, Bambi. Oh, Bambi. I mean, there's all sorts of stories about animals that are doing everything they can to stay with their family. And dogs also do everything. A good dog will be a man or a woman's best friend. And I think my opinion is, and here's a disclaimer real quick. I am a conspiracy theorist. So that's my disclaimer. And once again, this is just my opinion, but I feel that, but that other stuff, I think there's plenty of evidence to back that up. And what is love? Then once again, you're getting into labels, you're getting into words. And if there's a point where people were communicating telepathically, showing images, you could communicate without flaw. Now, even in the English language, each word has so many different interpretations that you could be, for example, when I talk to Kristen, like half the time we're just like, we're not even on the same page, even though what I'm saying, the words that I'm saying, she's not getting. It's like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's totally true. And I'm sure you guys have the same problem. It is what it is. So to think that, you know, when you say love or you say the devil or you say Lucifer, you know what I think of when you say Lucifer, Global Witness? I think of that the term now is Luciferian means illuminated, but then you can take the Lucifer, like in the movie Legend, where you've got the devil that's got the horns and he's like, the sun is my destroyer. And he's talking, you know, he's talking about, you can't have light without the dark. So what I have come to the conclusion is Luciferian doctrine, everybody has their own opinion on that, but maybe what some mean is, because if you look at the Latin version, it's illuminated, but then there could be the false light. You're talking about maybe what's the false light. And then you can read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth to talk about once you leave this physical body and you're in the astral realms and the higher realms and the next level, you're still going to have to always be on the lookout for the serpents that hide in the shadows and to stay away from the angles because the angles are finite. So stay in the circles because they're infinite. And that makes sense. And then you can take the angles in the military. Look at the military, how they're like, head, hope, head, hope. It's an angles. They're very jagged edge and stuff like that. So if you're working in circles, it's going to be a lot tougher to get you. You know, the circle of protection, etc. So maybe this information, depending on your label and how you're putting it, like Wayne, you don't think there's a Lucifer? Oh, I certainly do. I think that there's not only a Luciferian mindset in a light and false light, but I also think that there's entities out there that—
I just said I didn't think there was a Lucifer. Now, everyone's putting words in my mouth here. I didn't say I didn't believe in God. I simply said I don't believe in the biblical God.
I never said that.
Well, no, I'm saying that it seems to be drawing conclusion. Do I know that there's an evil incarnate? Yeah. I mean, you cannot go through life and not know that that exists. But, you know, sometimes—
the question I have is, do you think I'm evil incarnate?
No. I can tell you, the evil incarnate I knew was an ex-boss I had. You know, the guy was truly, I mean, just an asshole.
Well, Wayne, the what I say is I don't make an assumption as to
He's
what—
as bad as Heidi Vandenberg, isn't he, Rex? dropping the dirty language on the podcast.
Oh, the dirty language. She's gotten better. She's gotten better.
I don't do any of the F-bombs or anything. No, that was Jenny.
You haven't had the chance to meet Heidi yet, have you? She's awesome.
But it's a good conversation. You know, the point is, I think we're all searching for that. You know, if you believe what, Mario Belingo is saying, that, you know, the Vatican knows about this. They know that they basically perverted, that the Bible was never meant, the Old Testament was never meant to be a religion. It was never intended for a religion to be founded upon it. That was the premise for what you now have, quote unquote, Judeo-Christianity. And what I hear so much in the Western world is that we filter everything through that lens. And from there, we then disperse out. And all I'm saying is that if there is, in fact, this trap, then it defines the universe on a very limited basis. And that's the thing that I struggle with in my own life and my meditative life, is that the universe in all of its infancy, it's infinite. It can't be defined. And to say that my birth, when I came into the birth passage and the rite of passage of birth into this death cycle, because no one gets out of this alive, then I can't believe that there's only bucket A, bucket B. It's like, Jeff, you and I have talked. Why do I have to choose a God at all?
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. Sandra said something today. We were talking to Derek on the phone and we just hung up. And Sandra said something to the effect of, maybe Lucifer is the light bearer because you have to go through darkness before you can really get to light. And Derek was talking about, is this that we're living in death? Is this really death and we have to escape this to come into life?
I think it is. I mean, the Bible, doesn't it say in the beginning? It doesn't say light was in the beginning. It says in the beginning was God, and God said, let there be light. By that alone, the implication is that God was in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Rex? I say.
Well, hey, that darkness. Let's talk about that for a minute, because you brought up a good point. Tiamat.
Yes.
If anybody's read the story of Tiamat, the Enuma Elish, Tiamat is the mother of the Anunnaki. Now, my opinion is the Bible, at least the version that people read, and when it gets to the New Testament, much of it, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of stuff in there, but you can actually go back and read these older tablets that have very similar stories to what you're reading in the New Testament. Even the Hebrew scriptures, you can go back and read the Sumerian scriptures, and the Sumerian civilization defeated the Arada civilization, and the Arada civilization was a civilization that didn't communicate in language. They were the builders. They're the ones that built Göbekli Tepe, etc. So then after this great cataclysm, once again, you go to the Great Pyramid and you see all these hieroglyphics and you're like, oh, they're the ones that built the pyramids. No, they came after, and they were trying to figure out how it was done. So they're writing stuff down. But the most powerful book I've ever read as far as magic work, and I didn't even practice it, I just read it, was the Book of the Dead. I've got a copy, the Book of the Dead, by the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I mean, I had this one dream that was so scary and so just frightening after I read it that I feel like there was a lot of connections with what I was reading in these hieroglyphics, that you got to be real careful with that stuff. I mean, they were messing with stuff. Like, you want to get into different dimensions and you want to really understand this controlling energy and vibrations and different levels, then the Egyptians, going way back, they knew what they were doing.
So did John Dee, right? So did John Dee. So the exploration and the pulling of all of this, John Dee working for the Queen of England, right? So John was pulling out the Enochian alphabets, and he was pulling out the Enochian calls and practicing these things and divination, and the reality of that the magic that he would deploy, like Rex reading the book, the magic that he would deploy was, as I said, the Spanish Armada was coming, and the dark entities told John Dee to tell the Queen, don't even go out there after them, right? And two times straight, the armadas were completely enveloped by a massive storm that came out of nowhere with no clouds and completely sunk the entire armada. And the amazing part is
you tell me John Dee did this?
John Dee, yeah. So in the Enochian language, now let's remember there's two Enochs, right? So two Enochs from a historical standpoint. Yeah, so you've got that. But I ran an Israeli intelligence firm in Ra'anana, Israel, and I had quite a bit of people that worked for me that were high tech intelligence guys. And one of the guys was his name was Dr. Lidor Troyansky. Oh, nice, Rex. We got to do some book sharing. And one of the guys was Dr. Lidor Troyansky, and he told me about this is ancient, and he said, this is an ancient technology that I have, and he drew me a diagram, and we started to work on this thing together. Now I'm going to draw you a quick diagram just to show you about some of the stuff, because we talk about dark energy forces that are actually on this planet. Sorry, I'm going to erase my whiteboard.
I hate to see you erase Chuck Norris like that. And you got an eraser now, not just your hand. Awesome.
So I'm going to show you the weapon that he invented, which is deployed today, but he based this off of an ancient, what he called ancient. So you have a ship. Now this ship is, say, 300 feet long, okay, just for the sake of it, right? He said, how do you sink that ship without touching it? And I said, I don't know. And I said, can you? And he said, no, I don't even have to touch that thing to sink it, to destroy it and kill everybody on it. I was like, well, how do you do that? And he says, well, this is the secrets of the ancients. So he spoke of these things. Now, this is the guy that runs the Technion Institute in Israel, right? They're running all these things. So here you have this vessel that they would release down here, a bomb that would have a bubble from a depth that would grow, because obviously the depth of pressure, the bubble at a depth is small, and then as it goes up, it grows, right? So the compression is being released. So this bubble is released by a bomb underneath it, or predicting where it's come. And as this bubble gets up here, this bubble now takes up this much room underneath this vessel. This vessel is not designed to withstand the weight at any one point. It's designed to distribute the weight across the whole thing. So this vessel instantly cracks here in the center because all of the weight is being bared here and here. And so this vessel cracks and falls right into the hole instantly. Or a smaller vessel, the bubble comes up and it's a smaller vessel that just falls right in and the water closes on top of it. And he said in ancient times, massive armadas were destroyed by malevolent entities from the center of the earth. This is a highly, highly, highly respected Israeli special services technologist. This is literally the guy. So I sat there with eyes wide open, you know, one of those things. And today it comes back. And then I read that about the Spanish Armada, that it was a storm that bubbled up from underneath the ocean. I was like, well, there you go. It's right there. So, and then when you've got things, you know, when you do begin to read, Rex probably also explored the, you know, lost continent of Atlantis. Well, there's also a lost continent of Pan. So we've got the panda bear, which would be a remnant, which also reflects the nature of the people that were told to be on there. Small people, workmen, craftsmen, that would be tantamount to the Hobbit. Literally, that's the description of the Hobbit would be the people of Pan. They only loved gardening, and they were incredible craftsmen. They could make and build anything. 100% peaceful. Those were the people of Pan. You also have Peter Pan, right? Any remnant of Pan. Those are the people that are said to be in this earth. So when you see in these ancient scriptures on the earth and in the earth, there's something more there that I believe that we know far more about the cosmological side of things and far less about what's actually right here on this planet. You've got the Hopi that also speak of the ant people coming from in the earth, which we're going to be exploring, right? So the ant people also be in the Anunnaki, right? So we've got all of these different things, plus shapeshifters, and the Hopi legends are far older than the Bible. Way old. I mean, these go way, way back, right? So we can debate what's taking place here all day long. The reality is that I believe that we're finally starting to discover who we are. We are partially descendants of somebody within this, but the reality is who we are inside that connects with something else outside of this. The crack in the magnetosphere, I believe, has to do with us having the ability to connect something outside. I've never believed for 1 second or thought for 1 second that this place was home.
That's awesome, man. That I had no idea that you worked with an intelligence agency. Yeah, I'm going to have to get a few drinks and ask you some questions. Be like, hey, man, I'm joking. I gave away my plan. I will never do such a thing. Let me bring something up real quick. What Wayne said, the darkness. This is Tiamat, okay? This is a sigil of Tiamat, and Tiamat was the darkness. And when Tiamat created these planets, the Anunnaki, then the Anunnaki plotted against Tiamat, and then Tiamat got destroyed, and then now we're supposedly the remains of Tiamat and the asteroid belt. There's so many ancient stories that put all this together, and Pan was a hornball. I'm just saying, you've probably seen that statue of Pan, and he's just a little bit far out there. But anyway, so you know which one I'm talking about, Jeff. You can Wikipedia it even. It's on Wikipedia. Pan's having a little too much fun. I'm just saying. But anyway, so what was I going to go with this, man? That was incredible. But the reason I showed you these books, this one right here, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, this is written by Jason Louv, and he talks about how the Empire was able to get so much power because of these Enochian calls.
Magic.me, I believe, is Jason's website.
Yeah. Jason, I mean, he knows his stuff. And as far as the calls go and the sigils and stuff like that, I have a confession to make. I have said a few of the calls, and you can actually go to leakproject.com and listen to a couple of the calls. But I did it for enlightenment. I did it for higher self-realization and bringing information in. So the right intent. But what's interesting is Jason brought up how you do these calls, they work, and you'll see apocalypses happen in your life, these revelations, an unveiling of sorts. Apocalypse means unveiling, if that's just so you know, for those that didn't. I know you guys. But so I've had apocalypse scenarios happen since reading those calls. And it made me realize that we are far lower in the food chain than we want to think that we are. There's influences far above and beyond what I have been able to come up to. Like they're one step ahead of us. You know what I mean? Like you do things, and like we're talking about synchronicity and AI. Could that be AI, or is that these angels? Is that these beings? Because I've seen a lot more of it. I've been seeing it for years, you guys, but I've seen a lot more of it since these calls. I mean, it's like the universe is talking to you constantly. It's incredible.
And I'll tell you something that I think will surprise a lot of you. A few months ago, Mr. R. Wayne Steiger recommended to me, and I hope I'm not talking out of school, Wayne, but recommended to me a magical ceremony. And I performed it. Sandra and I performed it. And I thought he was crazy. I thought, okay, I'll do it just because Wayne's a nice guy and he says to do it. And I'm telling you, it was amazingly profound, and the results of it, even today, are astounding to me. So there is some reality to this stuff. And Wayne's a lot deeper and a lot more interesting than you think he is, ladies and gentlemen. And he's also a prophet. He's made several predictions that have come true in my life like you wouldn't believe.
Magic.
Wayne,
Yeah.
say
Well,
something.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that about you, Wayne.
Well, thank
Rex,
you.
as far as going to doing the Enochian calls, and I've said obviously I wear black. I say that so when I go into the dark places to find the truth, nobody can see me. But the truth hides in dark places. Period. The reason why you're told not to go there, not to do these things, not to read that book. When I say to some Christian, when I say to them, I go, "Have you ever read the Satanic Bible?" And they go, "No, why would I ever do such a thing?" I go, "What? If that actually does have any truth about Satan, wouldn't you want to know a little bit more about the guy, right?" So, but the fact is, and then when people ask me, "Have you ever read the Satanic Bible?" I said, "Yeah," and I grab my Bible and I show them. I go, the whole thing is filled with Satan. Are you kidding?
Yeah, good one. That's a good point. And it's interesting because when I was a teenager, I read through the Satanic Bible and I was like, oh man, and I didn't really know what to get out of it. But if you actually read they use 11 commandments, not 10. They have 11 commandments in the Church of Satan, and they're a bunch of they don't even believe it. Most of them, they're all different. But from what I've studied, they don't even. And I'm not sticking up for them or anything. I'm just saying they're more humanists than they are Satanists. Like there's people out there in cults that worship this dark lord, this entity, but then a lot of them are just, they do it out of, now I'm not saying that by doing that, they're not worshiping this entity. I'm just saying the mindset, if you read, and the commandments that they have, they make sense. They're like, don't hurt kids, don't hurt animals and stuff like that. Now, once again, if there's bad apples out there doing nasty shit everywhere, part of my language, but you can look at every religion out there. I mean, my goodness, look at the original church. And look at all the nastiness associated with that. Heck, my goodness, back in the day, a couple hundred years ago, they were burning women at the stake just to get their land. Oh, she's a witch. And guess what? If she doesn't burn, then we know she's a witch. And if she burns, well, she's not a witch and she'll be saved. And they really believed it.
They did.
It's crazy. And they're like, well, God told me. I read it in the Bible. So, I mean, you got to be careful. I mean, I love the Bible. I love it. There's so much good information out there. I believe in a higher power. I believe in divine providence. I just don't think that if you read the Bible, and what is described as the Bible, like there's parts in the Bible where it says God told, who was it? God told to kill every man, woman, and child in certain areas. Because,
which time, Rex? Which time?
Which time? There was a number of them.
and you know what? I've looked at that and I've said to myself, well, let's look at what a human would do if they created something like an algorithm that becomes self-aware. What do? They shut it down. They're not all knowing though. They do everything they can to turn off that algorithm because they don't want that algorithm going and rewriting the codes in a nuclear submarine and start launching Skynet style Terminator scenarios. But then you look at that at a different perspective. Like maybe things really were bad back then. Maybe there was some bad stuff, but then you think maybe it's political. And then when God's saying he loves the smell of flesh, doesn't that sound more earth? Like human, like, oh, love the smell of burning goats.
What God's got cooking.
Well, I mean, when they sanctified that temple, what was it? They how many cows? It was like well over 10,000. I mean, woo! That's a barbecue,
I love the
Sam.
smell of burning flesh in the morning.
But I have a question for everyone here. We've been talking about the light, so let's just speculate a little bit. So, upon your death, you're now about to pass over. We always talk about light, but the question I have, how does the spirit see light? And would it be the same type of photon light that we see here? You see, I think that there may be a whole different light that has been hidden from us that I think the Egyptians were looking at. I mean, you can go back. It all has to do with the knowledge of light.
Well, Wayne, our perception, again, we're in a perceptive world. We want to touch and see and things. We see light as white because you look at the sun or you look at the moon. But the reality is, and this is what I've always said, because this always comes from me wearing black. People say, why do you wear black? I go, because black is light. Because light is color, contains all color, right? Black is all colors mixed together. White is the absence of color. The only reason why the moon or anything reflects as something as light is that it's reflection of it. That's why you shine light through a prism and it's going to shine all of those colors. You mix all those colors together, you're going to get black. The reality is, if you look up in the cosmos right now, you go outside, it's dark. I'm pretty sure it's dark everywhere we're at. If you think that the sun isn't shining right on up there, well, then you're wrong. The fact is that you don't see the sun's light until it's actually reflecting off of something. It has to be reflecting off or through something for you to see it. Without it reflecting off or through something, it is black. You can't see it. It is invisible light. There are different types of light that cause the fragments or the components within that light in order for you to see it, kind of like a laser, right? That you would see a laser. A laser is a completely different set of circumstances to build that light. It is not the same. So you're right, Wayne. There are many different kinds of light. I mean, many different kinds of light. Yeah, you've got one right there.
So light is darkness and darkness is light.
Of course. Well, look up into the cosmos right now, right? You've got a black sky. How come you can't see the sunlight? What, because the sun's not big enough and shining up there?
Well, by the way, I wear black because it's slimming.
Yeah, and the fact is the light spectrum itself, we see less than 3% of the light spectrum. So it's just that thought, you know, when we pass on. Yeah,
we are blind in multitudes of ways here in this space.
And then what are we looking at? I see Wayne's point, and that's very profound to me. We're thinking about, we're looking for light, you know, don't go to the light, go to the light. But how do we even know what we're going to see as light when we're not in this meat suit? Rex, what do you think about that? Go to light, don't go to light. What kind of light are we talking about? Is it Coors Light, Miller Light, or what is it?
Well, I definitely ain't having any Coors Light or Miller Light. However, the light itself, that's a great question. And I can't answer that. I can give you my thoughts. And based upon my research, my knowledge, all the scriptures that I've connected the dots, and one set of literature that I really appreciate. And I don't think it was necessarily written by Thoth, but I think that it has the Thoth consciousness. I think that it has the thought consciousness, the balance, and you can read through the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and there's so much information in there that's timeless and links to other scriptures, etc. And it was most likely written by somebody that had some very powerful esoteric knowledge and knew much about Thoth, because it's, you know, Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth, some people think of the same archetype. And then you can actually connect that to astrotheology, which I think all religions, not all religions, but most religions started from the stars and the planets. The astrotheology connections to religion and the Bible and the gods and the angels there's too much there to dismiss it. With that said, you have a microcosm and a macrocosm. And I don't think that if you say as above, so below, that's necessarily a Luciferian mindset. That's been around. Even the Gnostic Christians that believe heavily in Jesus as their savior talked about the as above, so below. It's science. It's quantum physics. You can say that every star in the universe is a representation of a soul or your spirit on this planet. And you've heard that saying, every soul is a star. And then I've seen pictures of what could be a soul leaving the body, and it looks like a flower, almost like a lotus flower. And it is also very similar to the symbol you see on the India flag and these ancient Hindu teachings, this wheel that has 8 points. And what does 8 have? 8 is infinity symbol, the soul. So I think there's a soul. I think that the soul, also another thing that makes it more powerful than the animals, at least right now in this form, is our pineal gland. Our pineal gland and the level of consciousness that our pineal gland has, because other animals have a pineal gland, but it's our level of consciousness. So maybe our soul is actually just a collection of memories and experiences and consciousness that is compiled in a single point that grows and adapts the further it goes. If it's reincarnation, you go into another body. If you go into heaven, if you consider heaven like in the biblical terms, I think when they talk about heaven, oftentimes in the Bible, they're talking about space, in the heavens. And when it says in the beginning, we created man in our image, the Elohim, that's plural. So, conspiracy theorist disclaimer, your thoughts?
Elohim, yes, does mean gods, plural, right? Just so if anybody didn't know that. The I
Gods
am,
and goddesses, male and female.
the I am is pluralized. It's like us putting the S on the word, just for the folks out there. Elohim means gods. So when you do read in the scriptures that it says, and the gods made man and said, let us make man in our image. Our image. Now that makes a little bit more sense rather than having the singular form of saying God. Going back, Rex, I wanted to, because you were mentioning some things that if you've watched my channel at all or seen some of the conversations, the things that I discuss about in the Bible, when you're talking about the satanic Bible and you guys were talking about it being Satan, the reality is that this is why I say if you want to know more about the truth of what the system is, then you go into the Illuminati's understanding of it. You go into the Luciferian doctrines. Believe me, they've been running this planet a long time. They've been far more involved in this. They are far more enlightened as far as the malevolent beings that would run it, that come and pose as benevolent. So the fact is that you've got all through Scripture everything telling you right in front of your face. The Luciferian doctrine states that they have to tell you the truth. And this is so they can absolve themselves of the crime itself, right? That they tell you the truth and the lie at the same time, and you accept the lie. Why? Because you yourself want to accept God as this wrathful, vengeful, jealous God, right? So you want to accept that wrathful God because you are that person too, right? So it makes it easier. It gives you a justification for how you feel. But it's kind of like, and I'll read to you, Wayne, you'll get a kick out of this. If you haven't checked this out, is I've been talking about this the past few days. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, Paul tells you point blank, you can go to any Christian church, you can go to any of the religions, and they'll tell you that the God of this world is referred to, that's God, right? All of them will tell you that it's God. But Paul tells you point blank to your face, lowercase g God, and he says, in their case, the God of this world, lowercase g, has blinded the minds, not the eyes, the minds of unbelievers. So the people that actually don't believe, so they really never did, to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel and glory of Christ. So look at that as consciousness, true consciousness as to who you are, who is in the image of the big God, uppercase G. He tells you point blank that there are two gods there. David himself, and I've said this many times, anybody that's been in my channel, David himself battles with it, and yet they completely ignore it. That David himself is told by God in 2 Samuel 24, I want you to go count the people, create a census, cause a census, count the people for war and taxation. And David does what God wants. And then in the very, very same chapter, he has to repent to God for doing just what that guy asked. And then he's punished for it. So you're like, who the hell is this bipolar God that he's talking about? No, it's not a bipolar God. There's two entities here, right? They're battling with this, which is precisely what Israel means. It means one who wrestles with God. That's wrestling with these two assholes that are doing this stuff. Sorry, Jeff, but it's literally.
Are they Inky and Leo?
Well,
yeah,
and then you. Oh, sorry.
It's just a battle that is taking place. That people are. You've got to be aware of this stuff, and we reflect it ourselves, right? We know it. We feel it ourselves. We can watch it take place. It's all through Scripture, and again, like telling you the truth right in front of your face. If you read the Gnostics, Jesus's words say, or Christ, Isu, Yeshua, whatever you're going to call him, he says, if you want to know the truth, know what's in front of your face. In other words, you can't see this. Your mind has been blinded to it. We have been dumbed down. We are idiotized to this. We don't see it. But look, think about this. And this is the one thing that I ask any Christian, any pastor. I say, Satan says the Bible says Satan exalted himself on high, placed himself on the throne, calls himself God. And I'd go, and I'll grab the Bible and go, please show me in this book where he's doing the works of where he calls himself God. And they'll go, well, it's not really in there. I go, BS, it's everywhere. It's this guy that wants to kill everything. What an appetite for blood. This guy that wants you to kill something and sprinkle his blood on the altar. Who is this psychopath? Right? I'm sorry, but this isn't the God of love, mercy, and kind forgiveness. This isn't the God that reflects the true character that I want to be on a daily basis. But he sure gives me the excuse to turn into that guy. Right? If you're looking for an excuse to be that guy on the street that can secretly go and squash people and kill people and hate people and all that, well, hey, just go to Christian church today. They'll teach you how to be just like that God. build a wall, get those people, go bomb those people, kill those people. They're wrong. Oh, those Mexicans, they're illegals. Blah, blah. Just go to a church.
So are we talking, it's interesting. So are you saying that there's two different gods? There's a different God of the Old Testament and different God of the New Testament?
No, well, different God in the New Testament. Yes, that's what Christ was telling. That's why he said to the Hebrews, your father is Satan. You're worshiping the evil God here. And he's like, that's why he said the kingdom's within you. He was saying my father. That's why he was, but being very specific, right? And so that's why even when he quoted and spoke to Satan, when he's being challenged on the hill, Satan offered him the whole world, right? Because it's his.
But wasn't Philo the one who introduced, but Philo was the one who introduced the whole concept of the Trinity, of a Father, a Son, and the Holy Spirit. So you see that this is where it's mind coitus.
Yeah, you know, but see, but you're talking about the Trinity. You're talking about stuff that's not even mentioned. So you're talking about the additional pieces.
Well, no, I'm talking about it when you reference Father, because I always want to know where Mama's at.
Well, Mama's there too. So you could call that the Trinity. Here's the Son. You got Mama you're standing on, and Father being source outside of that. Instead of trying to put our finger on that, but I'm not talking about Pauline teachings, right? Anybody that knows my stuff, you know I've got a serious issue with Paul. And
so this guy on top of you.
What's that?
I was talking about Jeff.
And he was speaking metaphorically, folks.
Yeah. So
Rex, what do you think about all this Bible talk?
I think it's exciting to get different ideas and hear different information. And I appreciate hearing everything from all of you. Matter of fact, I haven't heard this much of Global Witness yet. And I think it's just great. So this is fantastic. I haven't talked to Wayne a long time, or you. So I appreciate it. And I was taking notes. There's some things that I wanted to say that I wonder, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. So let me adjust my 5G shielding. My 5G shielding liner that comes with my Leap Project cap that are offered that block 5G, literally up to 30 gigahertz. It's pretty cool, but that's a whole other podcast. Wait a second. What are we talking about? I know what I'm talking about. I'm just joking. Labels, DNA, words, soul, reptile, no love, emotion. Oh yeah, those are notes that I wrote down. We already talked about that. And then you said, okay, here we go. Emerald Tablets of Thoth. False light, first light. Most people go there. And the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, I think it's Emerald Tablet number 6. Don't quote me on that, but one of the tablets of Thoth is describing when you go to these other levels, even when you pass to the next side, that there are going to be these serpents that hide in the shadows and then it also talks about a false light. So outside of the serpents in the dark, there's also a false light. It is the first light, and most people go there. So the few make it to what you could call the real light or just a higher level. But here's what I wonder. Do you need to go through one and understand one completely? Do you need to understand the first level of light to get to the other? And then I want to talk about Saturn for a minute, and I want to talk about Satan, and what makes me think also that the Bible and these religions are based on astral theology. Satan, Saturn governs the day of Saturday. Religion, most people go to church on Sunday now, but it was Saturday was one of the original days of worship in these Judeo type religions. And then also Saturn means, or Satan means adversary. So Saturn is the adversary to our sun, which is the sun of our solar system. And in the Bible, it says Jesus is the sun, the way to the Father through the light. So I wonder if the sun is some type of stargate. And when you pass on to the next level, your spirit can actually go through there, or you can choose and pick different dimensions. And Saturn could be the adversary to the sun. So it's just the opposite side of the spectrum. It's the duality. It's not evil. It's not wicked. It's not bad. It just is. Once again, you have to have one to have the other. You must have darkness to show the different levels of light, and you can choose which side is you want to pick. But also, I think that these sides are necessary, and that makes sense to me more so. And then also, isn't there a constellation, like a Hades constellation in the heavens, in outer space? And you could look at that as hell in a sense. Maybe that's a different part of the universe that people go to in different vibrational frequencies when they pass to another side. I've had out-of-body experiences. I've gone into different astral realms. And it's very real. And that's made me realize we are absolutely more than our physical bodies. So the universe itself and the planets and the stars and then you hear the stories about how the original beings, the fallen angels that came down, the bornless ones, the boneless ones, they didn't want to come down into this physical body because they were doing a lot better where they were. It was like singularity style. Now they're in this physical limitation. And they didn't like it, but the different evolutionary process that we think of as evolution is actually devolution. And once again, we're at like that 5th generation right now, the 5th model of AI. So what are your thoughts on that? The astrotheological aspects, Satan, Saturn, the adversary to the sun being Jesus, the sun of the solar system, that could be representation, the as above, so below, the holographic universe theory, each sum can create the whole.
Well, there's something there, Rex. I was showing on one of my videos that Saturn you have at the north and south, if you're going to call that, so you help people understand. Saturn has a hexagon at the top and at the bottom, which first of all is quite unnatural, right? And it's a perfect hexagon. From a measurement standpoint, it's a perfect hexagon. In that perfect hexagon, you put the Star of David. In that perfect hexagon, you put the Masonic symbol, right? So the compass and the ruler. In that perfect hexagon, also, you put the all-seeing eye and the triangle. All of the different components being Saturday, the Sabbath. There's no question that Saturn represents those pieces and that there is much more to that because they wouldn't put such an effort to hide these components within that if it was nothing, right? So anytime that they hide something, it's like the Mason symbol, like you can't find a building with the 13th floor, right? Or a hotel room with a number 13 or the 13th floor. There's a reason why for that, right? So you've got Paul, who's the false apostle, claiming the 13th. I'm just telling you.
13th. Whoa, that's 13th. Great. I never saw that.
You've got Paul, who's the 13th apostle, right? That he says, but really it was Jesus, which would have been the 13th. So he was taking the place of him. That's why he refers to him as Christ Jesus rather than Jesus Christ, reversing him. He's literally the Antichrist according to Scripture. He says so. He tells you point blank, period. Full stop. I'll debate.
And according to my book, damn it.
Bring them, right? So the reality is that there is much more there, what you're talking about with regards to Saturn and the sun, because otherwise they also wouldn't have, when it came to the Greeks, they wouldn't have made the birth of Jesus being on December 25th when they know damn well that it wasn't that, considering that he was circumcised 8 days after birth in Nisan 13. That's not even close to December 25th, but that is the sun's birth. That sun, the one that shines, right? That's going from the winter solstice and the summer solstice. So all of these things, everybody's hiding crap everywhere. All of these truths are hidden. You just have to peel them away. And they're all telling you these truths so they can be absolved of the crime of not telling you to go, what are you talking about? We didn't tell you. It's everywhere. It's in every movie. It's in every song. It's in every poem. It's all over the place. And that is that connected consciousness that you can either co-create from an enemy standpoint or co-create from a father standpoint. There is something there. From this standpoint of this conversation, if we can't put our finger on it and say what these things are, you just have to reflect them inside yourself. The only kingdom I have control over is this one right here.
Yep. And you talk about the Trinity. You know what the real Trinity of humanity is? It's represented in those 3 monkeys, and yet it's been twisted a little bit. The real Trinity of humanity is see no truth, speak no truth, hear no truth. And he makes them all just go quiet.
It's still, I think it gets back down to the bottom line is that if we accept the idea that there is a judgment, if there's good, we're pawns in this. And I think that that's a suck way to no existence, that's why I don't believe in prophecy, because if prophecy is real, for instance, the book of Revelation, then it means that none of us have an actual bearing on any of this. Now, I've heard the debate, well, no, each person has a right to choose. You don't have a right to choose anything. And
that's what Derek was saying.
Yeah, I mean, so I reject that because here's the insanity of it. They gave us the book. Why the hell are we allowing it to happen? If you're saying it can't be stopped, well, then that's a dead end that I don't want any part of.
How about you write a book?
What can we do?
Real quick, I was just going to say, write a book, call it prophecy, get 1 billion people to believe it's true, and then what happens?
It becomes prophecy.
Well, you know what? But, hey, Wayne, but let me tell you something about prophecy. The amazing part about prophecy is that what I've learned is that when you can, just like I was saying, that man has become so predictable that now a computer robot can emulate him. That in the time that you can see, I can tell you when I recognize the system. I don't think John in Revelation is giving a whole lot different other than what he was already seeing. He's already seeing the constellations. He's already seen what was taking place within the Roman Empire. He's already seen the fall of a fiat currency in the Romans, which carried the head of Caesar, where they had gone from the Hebrews shekel, which was real silver, to a false currency, a fiat currency. He's explaining to you the fall of Babylon as a result of that false currency, which is why the merchants. So he's not telling you something, oh, I believe that this. He's telling you the crap he was looking at. And it becomes prophecy. And that's why he says we repeat this, because we got to flee from this. We are caught in this cycle. The cycle is part of it. In order for you to leave this place, you're doomed to repeat it unless you deny it. And that's really what you're talking about going into the light, Rex, is that you read these ancient texts, and even in the Gnostic text, where you go into the light and it says, and you want to surpass, you want to pass that light, right? And these beings, what do they say to you? Where do you think you're going? Right? And you go, and the correct response is, I'm going from where I came, right? And then they say, well, who are you? And you say, I'm motion and rest. So you're giving literally like a scientific definition as to who you are and where you come from, that would be the correct response. It's like a key. That's why Christ's saying, I've given you the keys to the kingdom. To the rest of the people, they're just going to hear the stories. They're not going to hear. That's cryptography. Everything was coded, right? Because if it wasn't coded, all of this stuff gets distorted by man and gets changed. Just like what builds the frustration that Wayne says, hey, they gave us the book. Yeah, they gave it to you, so they have the excuse to say they gave it to you, but they're not revealing to you the secrets that are in it. I promise you that. This is what we're doing here, because they've kept all of that crap out. Look, they absolutely plagiarized the living crap out of the Sumerian text. There's no question about it. And in that's so they could refer to it and have some accurate statements about the origins of where we came from. But within those texts, they have encoded and encrypted all sorts of messages all over the way to support who it is that they're supporting. So when we talk about whether there's an enemy, here's the thing. I'm a strategist. I ran strategy at Microsoft. They hired me because I'm really good at strategy, right? So I ran strategy for Windows at Microsoft. And I can tell you right now, the people designing this crap, I am in literal awe. I can't even imagine who develops this strategy. So there is no question in my mind that there is some superior being on the evil side doing this, because I've met the best strategists in the world. I promise you, I've met the best cryptographers in the world, and they don't hold a candle combined to the people that have done this. It is that good.
So let's build a religion.
Christianity. Let's call it the Church of Zord.
I tell you what, that's why I reject it.
Yeah, if you ever saw a movie, there's a movie called The Book of Eli. Yeah. And it's a great example.
You do know I'm an ordained minister, I was, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to Bible college, went to Rhema Bible College. So
no wonder you're so pissed. All that wasted time.
Well, no. I'll tell you, the sect that I was with Kenneth Copeland. I know Joyce Myers. I knew her when she was actually starting. So I know some of the things I talk about. And, I've come to the conclusion in my life, I think you have to come to a point where either you reject it all and, to accept part of it means you basically are like putting your hand in gasoline. You're going to pull your hand back out. It can evaporate, but you're still going to have the smell.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Wayne, and here's what I learned, right? I had to, because here I am, a Christian my whole life, absolutely a Christian band, my family, all Christians. I know Pastor Jack Hayford, my pastor, very much into this. I had to destroy all of it. Just like you said, you either got to throw it out. Well, that's the accurate part. You have to throw it out before you can actually take it back and then start to find the truth.
Can I tell you what a rabbi taught me, a Hebrew rabbi? Because I was thinking decades ago of actually converting to Judaism. He said, the most insulting thing you Gentiles do is that you hold up our sacred Torah and you claim it for yourself, and you think that you can get what the message of our God was speaking to our people about. Now, that was the first meeting I had with him, and it got progressively more brutal. And Rabbi Fuchs was a good man. You know, he was right. He said at the end, he says, do the Jewish people a favor. Don't convert. So,
well, and see, that's the whole thing. They don't want anybody telling you who it is. I mean, look, they had a real issue with, you know, first of all, their God is this blood sacrifice God. They're doing all these sacrifices. And so Christ saying in this is the whole point of this, why they rejected it. He's like, for I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And he was going to prove through a crucifixion that the enemy, your God, your father is Satan, he literally says to them, right? Mm-hmm. So he was rebelling against all of that. He was destroying them. Also, him being a Hebrew, that was a pretty big deal. So there's no question that they don't want to acknowledge this. But here's the thing that I look at this, running that Israeli company, okay? The one thing that I began to recognize is just how much, I mean, the Israelis own 98% of the patents in the world. I mean, all of them, right? All of the high-end technology, all of the medical procedures, all of this stuff, all of the banking systems, the De Beers diamond cartel, gold bullion market, they have so much control over this world through all of the intellectual property. So when I listen to Christ say, your father is Satan and he's the God of this world and they're the chosen people of God, I go, totally makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. They're granted this stuff. They're a tiny dot on the map, yet they run the world. There's something wrong there, right? I'm not saying that there aren't some great Israeli people. Obviously, I have lots of friends that are Israelis that I'm sure would like to shoot me right through the forehead right now, but
What's that red dot, Derek?
It's a red dot. Go ahead, take your laser, Wayne. Put it right there.
Have you ever read Caesar's Messiah, Derek?
What's that?
Have you ever read Caesar's Messiah?
I've read portions of it. I've not a depth of study.
Yeah, it might be an interesting study to see what the Flavians actually did with the New Testament and the ancient.
Speaking of that book, Wayne.
Huh?
Speaking of that book, I'm going to be on the Vinny Eastwood show very soon with the author, me and the author talking about
excellent
book and my book, Apostle Paul Antichrist. And, you know, as we've identified a lot of stuff going on tonight, and as we kind of move towards wrapping this up, Derek sent me a song today on a completely unrelated matter, but it kind of gives an answer to what we can do to get past all this, to get through all this, to overcome all this. And the song talks about the only way that we stay together forever is to be broken together. And we've got to allow ourselves to be broken so we can quit thinking we know everything and get down to the bottom line of the similarities and the commonalities between us. And we can rebuild from there a world that can withstand all of this stuff and overcome all of this stuff. And we can move on in peace and harmony. Rex, what are your last words for this august group of people that we have here tonight?
Last words real quick. If you read the ancient Sumerian tablets, if you go to Oxford, there's an Oxford Sumerian translation website, and read this tablet that talks about how Inanna, which was married to Dumazid, which I think Dumazid, the Jesus that's talked about in the New Testament, I think a lot of that storyline is revolved around Dumazid in this ancient Sumerian tablet that predates the Hebrew and other translations that are available to you. And I'll tell you why. Dumazid was a great Sumerian king, and Inanna goes to the netherworld. And guess how long she goes to the netherworld? 3 nights and 3 days.
3 days
as long
and 3 nights?
Yeah, the same amount of time that Jesus did. And then she comes out of it, and guess who brings her out? Enki. Enki's the good guy. She goes into the netherworld to get knowledge that she's not supposed to get, but she's got so much power and she wants it. So she goes down there. She gets hung on a hook for 3 nights, 3 days. She tells her disciple to ask Enlil to see if he'll get her out. Enlil says no. Then somebody else is asked. They say no. And then they go to Enki, and Enki's like, yeah. So Enki gives his DNA, and in the storyline it goes, he gives part of his fingernail. I think it has something to do with his DNA. His fingernail turns into demons that go into the netherworld and pull her out and save her. And then she comes out, and the demons, when she gets out of the netherworld, though, this is where it gets interesting. This is where, I mean, just stay with me. For those that haven't heard the story, it's, if you connect the dots, it'll blow your freaking mind. She comes out of the netherworld after 3 nights and 3 days, the same amount of time that Jesus did. She's married to Jesus. Dumazid is Jesus. Dumazid is the king fisherman. Think about that. He's the king fisherman. Then when Inanna makes it out from the netherworld, the demons say that she has to give somebody up to take her place. She could have given up her barber, her stylist. There's all these other people she could have given up. But no, guess who she gives up? Her husband, Dumazid, the king fisherman. So she gives up her husband because you know why I think she did it? I didn't really say this in detail, but when she gets out of the netherworld, he's having way too much fun. Let's just put it that way. So I think she got jealous and she's like, no, I want him to go down there. So that'll teach you. So anyway, he gets taken down into the netherworld. And if you look at the dates and the timelines, when people worship the resurrection of Jesus on Easter, Ishtar, and Nana, the resurrection of Inanna, you are worshiping the resurrection of Inanna, which is also associated with the spring equinox. It's incredible. So I'm not saying Jesus wasn't real. I'm just saying what you're reading about Jesus is based on astrotheology. I'm a conspiracy theorist. That's a disclaimer. And oh yeah, be excellent to each other. How about that? Be the change you want to see.
My last
Wayne
word.
Steiger, regale us with some last words.
I love this guy. It's true.
Which one?
All of them. You know, guy is pearl. You know, I think it's the most apart. You know, at my age now, I am loving life. It is absolutely knowledge that comes forth. You know, the more I get into it, you know, I think it's been said, one lifetime is not enough.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Derek Broes, Global Witness, talk to us.
Last words. Yes, you're absolutely correct about Inanna and Dumuzi, is depending on whichever translation, Dumuzid or Dumuzi. Yeah, and the reason why Inky was so concerned and rescued her is because she had stolen the MEs from her, right? So these were devices that had all of this technology that controlled the waterways and all sorts of stuff and planets and basically could create things. So yeah, so she basically lured him in, and Inky had a real problem with keeping it in his pants. So he basically would have sex with just about anybody, right? So and that's the truth. And yes, Inky is the good guy in all of this. So you could look at Inky as actually Lucifer and Enlil as Satan. So when you get into the depths of the Sumerian text, man, and you think about that these are cuneiform, and they're also writing about this stuff. Okay, so these are documents, or these are tablets that are 20,000 years old, but they're writing about events that are 450,000 years old, and the same people are still alive writing these things. You're like, mind blown, holy crap, what am I looking at here, right? So, but Inanna, the thing about Inanna, first of all, Dumuzi ended up dying, and then she, you know, there's a whole story to that, and that's the big love affair. But here's the amazing part about this, is that this is where you can see in the New Testament the introduction of the Romans elements of these into that story. And Caiaphas absolutely says, just like that book that you held up, Wayne, absolutely says that they're going to build a religion around him. He tells you straight to your face. And the thing is that they say that he prophesied, because he was the high priest that year, that he prophesied that, hey, don't you think it's better for one guy to die? Because if we don't kill this guy, the Romans are going to come and take away our place in our nation. So let's kill him, and we'll use that death to build a religion around him and bring all the children of Satan, God, all the children of God into one, which they've done. I mean, he says it, and just because he says, they say he prophesied and that he was the high priest, they believe him. But we know how much we should believe these priests, right? That they're righteous. They're out there, you know, raping boys. So obviously, it's right there in black and white. And they injected, when the Council of Nicaea put that all together, they absolutely injected these pieces in there. It's quite obvious where they inject the pieces of what they needed it to be for Christ, as far as him dying and all of the different pieces to reflect and raising from the third day. I believe that Christ was actually smart enough to tell you that this is the story they're going to tell you too, because he knew these stories. He was highly intellectual, unbelievably smart, way more psychologically sound than everybody else, if you do read those texts. And if it wasn't real, then whoever was writing this at the time was that. So whoever that dude is, let's find him, if that's the case. So I'm saying whatever that is, there's a lot of stuff there that is beautiful, and you can absolutely see the Inanna Dumuzi story injected in there. You can no question about it when you get into these ancient documents that far exceed the age of the Torah. Far exceed.
Inanna's pretty hot, though.
She sounds hot, right? And well, hey, we've got Semiramis sitting in the harbor right off of New York City, right? So you got oh, it's a Statue of Liberty. It's like, oh, it's seriously, people. I mean, literally, Semiramis is right there. You go to the Medal of Honor website, and they've got the Statue of Liberty on there, and they got a whole statement, which they've recently scrubbed, by the way, but I got some screenshots where it tells that it's Semiramis. So, I mean, we can't get past the Masons in this place. We can't get past these people. It's the same societies, altered names all the way through. When you start to read the tactics in these ancient texts of these gods and how they would go about things, particularly like, them bombing the cities as a result of Marduk. And you also get to reflect on that they're intelligent, but at the same time, they're idiots too. So you've got Enlil that's like, yeah, let's go wipe out Marduk here because he thinks he's a badass and he's building Babylon. So they nuke it, which is essentially Sodom and Gomorrah. They nuke this thing and the weapons, but don't realize. And then after the fact, they're like, yeah, we got him. And then essentially they're like, oh, crap, because you've got the evil wind of the radioactivity now coming and wiping out all of their cities too. So, and the same thing with the destruction of the flood, Noah's flood, so to speak, right? Zia Sudra was Noah's name. So the flood happens. He says, don't tell him. And then when they're all dead, his reflection is, crap, where am I going to get slaves? And then Enki says, well, I saved my son. And he's like, son of a bitch. Oh, well, okay, I'll find favor in him too then. It's crazy. These two brothers are like two psychopaths battling each other. And yes, out of both of them, Enki seems like the nicer guy. But at the same time, I mean, seriously, dude, keep it in your pants.
Hey, one more comment real quick. Hey, man, he got horny. He just got horny. Give him a break, man. He's a god. He's running around, drinking ale, making people. It's one thing I wanted to say real quick in closing, too. If you go back to the Errata civilization, there are these stories about how Enlil is actually air. So let's take this to a whole other level. What if the stories that we're hearing now are just mistranslations and they're trying to interpret these deities? What if Enlil is air? And what if the ancient looked at Enlil as the air that we breathe? So without it, how are we going to survive? And Enki is related to Neptune in the astrotheological aspect. So it's a deep thought, man. Deep thought.
Yeah, so where does that lead where we came from?
Came from a holographic hard drive, man. We're just the thought of God.
Yes, Enki was Ea, which is Lord of Water. And then he became Enki, which En being Lord and Ki being Earth. So Lord of Earth, and then Enlil being Lord of Command, En being Lord, Lil being Commander, right? So Lord of Command and Enki being Lord of Earth. Enki was Ea being Lord of Water, which is why he was the one that had all the technologies to power their ships. I mean, this doesn't take a rocket scientist. Maybe it does actually take a rocket scientist to come up with this. But he was stopping to get water to power his ship, right? And then when you read about Moses,
which they showed us in the movie Oblivion.
Yeah, and then you got Moses, saying God came to me by night as a pillar of fire and by day as a pillar of smoke. I'm like, dude, that was a rocket. I don't know what you know, but that's exactly what a rocket looks like in day and nighttime, right?
And what would be a great way to part a Red Sea than to have a piece of machinery that sucks up water, just suck it up for you,
or have an arc reactor. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant doesn't tell you. I mean, it tells you in its name, right? The sons of Moses' brother, right? So you've got the sons get killed because they're not dressed appropriately, and then they have to be moved off of camp, right? So they're moved off of camp because why? Because they're radioactive. The Ark of the Covenant. If I were to, from an electrical standpoint, if I were to do a schematic and I was going to build a massive capacitor, I don't know, it would have those exact type of dimensions. It would have the wood. The wood would be covered in gold and silver, and the conductivity between the wings of the cherubim on top. So where the mercy seat, right? Where you have this plasma ball that you create by whatever it is that you put inside.
No, that was the glory of God.
Yeah, that was the glory of God. Well, the glory of God came down and killed the sons of Aaron, right? And they had to be moved outside the camp. It also explains why the priest would have to have the chest plate with the specific jewels that would repulse the electromagnetic activity. All of the things, all of this stuff, it's science, folks. And the Ark of the Covenant,
and obviously, it probably explains why he did so much shrooms, so he wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff.
Yeah, and Pharaoh was okay with Moses leaving right up until he looked around and said, where the hell did that ark go? And then he was pretty pissed and chased after him, which, by the way, he used to do what? He parted the Red Sea with that son of a bitch. So what is that thing, right?
Oh my, what a podcast. All I know is that
you guys heard that the sounds of hell, right? Where I don't believe it, but there's this conspiracy that's going on since the 90s, and they're like, oh man, we got 40,000 foot deep. It's the Kola deep super borehole, and the recordings came from 4 kilometers deep, and it sounded like this. You hear this. Stay away.
That's so cool.
We had that on one of our shows, Jeff. Remember, we had something going on one of our shows. It sounded like straight demons through the thing, and people are like, "Oh my God, demons are coming after Derek every time he talks," and it sounded straight like that.
Well, oddly enough, though, I have on my channel, and it was April 4th, 2016. I actually have a recording that it was an EVP. And I don't know where the hell it came from, but it sounded like hell.
Yeah, so did that art. When I went back and I watched on
let me tell you this.
Jeff?
Uh-oh, Derek froze up. It took a whole show, but froze up.
I froze up?
You're froze, Jeff.
Yeah, you were froze.
Frozen?
Yeah, you froze. Either that or you fell asleep.
So did you get your story out?
I did. I said that we had demons that...
did you get your story out, Derek? Good.
Yeah, I did.
Let me tell this one story before we go that I don't think I've ever told publicly before. Do you guys remember the show Dexter?
Yeah. Yep, I do.
And do you remember that when Dexter had that real hot, crazy girlfriend that was his sponsor in AA, Lila?
Yes.
Anyway, if you don't remember, look it up. But I had actually a demonic presence, a demonic entity, leave me at least 2 voicemails on my phone in the voice of Lila, the character from Dexter.
Whoa.
And give me prophetic messages that came true. That's how I felt, Rex. Just like that. My brain was blown out to the top of the
We're not alone.
So, ladies and gentlemen, go subscribe to the Leak Project with Rex Bear. Go subscribe to R. Wayne Steiger. Go subscribe to The Global Witness. And while you're here, if you heard something that you might have liked tonight and enjoyed it, please subscribe to this channel as well. And gentlemen, all I can say is that this can't be the last time that we do this.
It's been fun.
It has been.
Namaste to all of you. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning, so I guess I better go so I can get up before noon.
We come in
Gentlemen,
peace.
thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We come in peace.
Be excellent to each other.
Hey, Jeff, that's what you have to do to get that many subscribers. You need one of those things, right?
I need a little more shtick.
Yeah, you know what?
Adios, ladies and gentlemen. We love you all.
I'm gonna get a Jeff head.
I love it.
That'll have the opposite effect. You'll get less subscribers.
Good meeting you,
Thank
Wayne.
you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good meeting you, Rex.
Good meeting y'all. Thank you.
We have to do this again sometime. Take care.